Today for some reason I got two. I got one for yesterday also. Avoid that this week's parsha you had Mizbeach HaKtedes, right? This week's parsha L'Tzava, you have Mizbeach HaKtedes. All the kelim of the Beis HaMikdash, all the vessels of the Beis HaMikdash were last week Truma. This week is the big day Kahuna, the clothing of the Kohen, the first half of the parsha, and the second half of the parsha V'zeh Asher Tasa Lahem is how they would initiate the Kohen and to the avoid in the Beis HaMikdash. But Shvi, that means the chitas of Shabbos of this week, the chitas of Shabbos of this week is Vasisa Mizbeach Miktar Ktedes. It was a second Mizbeach which was used for Ktedes. So it's a short parsha. Shvi is not so long. So in that parsha which speaks about Mizbeach Ktedes, it says Leisalu Alav Oilo Mincha. That on the inner Mizbeach you're not allowed to put a Karbanela, you're not allowed to put a Mincha, you're not allowed to put a Nesach. Only Ktedes. Finished. On the Idam Mizbeach, you put only Ktedes. And then, of course, it goes on to say, Achas Bashana, once a year, they would be Mechapet the Mizbeach, Midam HaKippurim. Yom Kippur, they would actually sprinkle the blood of the soil and the pot on the Idam Mizbeach. But otherwise, Mizbeach HaPnimi was used only for Ktedes, it was not used for anything else. So the Rebbe says, what's the Pshat? You have an outer Mizbeach and an inner Mizbeach. The outer Mizbeach is for Karbonis. What's the Pshat in Karbonis? The Pshat in Karbonis is Birurim. Right? There's animalism, you have to transform animalism into holiness, you have to deal with things that are a taruvis, teva, ra, an entanglement of good and evil, and disentangle them. The inner Mizbeach is Ktedes. What's Ktedes? Ktedes is Lashon Kesher. To tie, Bechat Ketides Katana, to attach oneself, to tie oneself to a Kodesh Baruch Hu. So the Rebbe says, in every Yiddish heart, in every Jewish heart, is what's called Chitzonius Halev and Pnimius Halev. There's an outer heart and an inner heart. The outer heart is more passionate, and the inner heart is more deep. The difference between the outer heart and the inner heart is that the outer heart has to do with Karbanos. The outer heart is like the outer Mizbeach. What's Karbanos? Dealing with the world. The inner heart deals only with Ktedes. What is Ktedes? A relationship with Eibishter. So the Rebbe says every Jew needs a place in his heart where he or she is connecting himself to the Eibishter, and there's no world. In other words, why wasn't there one Mizbeach? Have one Mizbeach. And the same Mizbeach, you'll do Karbanis, and the same Mizbeach, you'll do Ktedes, you do outer things, inner things. And the Teretz says, because every Jew needs a place in his heart where all he does is connected to the Eibishter. There's no Nisyenes, there's no Yetzer Hara, there's no Avodah, there's no Birurim, it's just a connection to the Eibishter. And that's the lesson of Mizbeach HaKtedes. I just wanted to share that with you. Now today happens to be Zayin Nodar, which is the birthday and the Yartat of Moshe Rabbeinu. I just want to mention, I don't know why, but I want to mention, yesterday was the Rashag's Yartat. The Rashag was the Rebbe's brother-in-law. The Rashag was the son-in-law of the Friedrich Rebbe. That's enough of a mention. And I'm mentioning it for his chus for him. Rashag passed away 26 years ago. And when he died, the Rebbe gave him an incredible kavod. Incredible kavod. Obviously, the Rebbe went to his Lavaya. The Rebbe davened in his apartment during Shiva. And the Rebbe went to his Hakamas HaMatzeva. When they put up the Rashag's Matzeva, the Rebbe went. The Rebbe didn't go to the Hakamas HaMatzeva of the Rebbetzin. When they put up the Rebbetzins Matzeva, the Rebbe wasn't there. In fact, the Rebbe was asked if he wants to be by Hakamas HaMatzeva, and the Rebbe said there's no such minik Chabad. 1 year later, the Rashag passed away in Memtes. The Rebbetzin passed away in Memches. When the Rashag passed away, the Rebbe went to the Hakamas HaMatzeva. You can see the picture. The Rebbe stood there and he read all the Tilim, which is supposedly read by Hakamas HaMatzeva. The Rebbe had heard them, and the Rebbe lost his mother. They asked the Rebbe about Hakamas HaMatzeva, and the Rebbe said there's no such meaning. So Zalman Duchman, he must have been a Charakadisha, could be. Gathered some people, they went, they said some Kapitlach Tilim, and they reported back to the Rebbe that when they put up the Matzeva, they did something, and the Rebbe was very, very appreciative. The Rebbe gave him a lot of cover. I'll never forget Tafshin Nun, which was the first yard site 25 years ago, yesterday. The Rebbe gave out a maimer for him, for his chus, for his yard site. And the Rebbe tzchoiz gedrikt that she implied that the Rashag, after he passes away, is still running the yeshiva, like by tzaddikim. And I want to mention him. I want to mention him because he was a Yid who, when you look at the totality of his life, gave away everything he had to the Rebbe in a way that many people couldn't. Many people who called themselves big Hasidim, he gave away everything to the Rebbe. Everything to the Rebbe. And the Rebbe's response was a moedendik hakaras hatev. The Rebbe's response was an incredible acknowledgement of his sacrifice that the Rebbe showed him when he passed away. I remember when the Rebbe, they broke ground for 7-7, remember the groundbreaking? The Rebbe asked that he should speak. Before the Rebbe spoke, maybe even. But after, I forgot who, either before or after the Rebbe, no, before. Before the Rebbe spoke. Chase spoke, and then the Rebbe asked Rashag. You couldn't understand the word. He sat, he couldn't stand, he was sitting. It was 6 months before he passed away, and he spoke. You couldn't understand the word, but I just remember the Rashag used to say, the Rebbe the Shvager and the Rebbe the Shver. The Rebbe the Shvager, the Rebbe my brother-in-law, and the Rebbe the Shver, the Rebbe my father-in-law. And he would oftentimes get tongue-tied which one he wanted to say first, the Rebbe the Shver and the Rebbe the Shvager. But it was the Rebbe the Shvager, the Rebbe my brother-in-law, and then it was the Rebbe the Shver, the Friedrich Rebbe. So Yehi Zichrei Baruch, that's what I have to say. Today is Moshe Rabbeinu's day. Zayin Nodar is the Yortzeit of Moshe Rabbeinu, and the Yom Haledes of Moshe Rabbeinu. So we're going to use this morning talking about Zayin Nodar, especially since Ariella made a special request. And I think we all have a shtickle at HaKadosh HaTev, yeah? A shtickle to Ariel. Today is the finishing Say Kaddish for her mother, so we're going to use the opportunity to talk about Moshe Rabbeinu. Kedem Kol, two things from the Sichas. Number one, the famous idea that the Rebbe says on the Kutei Sichas, Haman knew Moshe Rabbeinu passed away Zayin Nodar. And Haman did not know Moshe Rabbeinu was born Zayin Nodar. So the question is obvious. How could that be? How did Haman know Moshe Rabbeinu passed away Zayin Nodar? How? Now, this is not the Rebbe's words. These are my words. Dare I suggest that when it says that Haman knew that Moshe Rabbeinu passed away Zayin Nodar, it meant Mazlech Chazi. The Haman HaGashmi probably did not know when Moshe Rabbeinu passed away. The Haman HaRuchni, the Klip of Haman knew, yeah? So if Haman knew an event that had occurred 1,000 years before, 1,000 years earlier, Moshe Rabbeinu passed away, how would he not know Moshe Rabbeinu was born? Mimanavshach. If he knows such ancient events, he'll know another ancient event. And if he doesn't know ancient events, how does he know Moshe Rabbeinu passed away? This was a kasha. And there are many, many other kashas. And the Rebbe has a very simple teretz. The teretz is, Haman knew Moshe Rabbeinu was born Zayin Nodar. He didn't think it mattered. Why not? Because the day a person is born, he's not a tzaddik. The day a person is born, he has a clean slate. He's yet to be determined. When a person passes away and he's lived kol yomav, as the Rebbe says, kol shneisav, as a tzaddik, then you know he's a tzaddik. So a person passes away and he's kol shneisav a tzaddik, so you have reason to mourn. But when a person is born, he's not a tzaddik. So the idea is, even if we say, and it's mistaber to say, that Haman HaRasha knew that Moshe Rabbeinu was born Zayin Nodar, he didn't think it mattered. And Haman did not understand this idea. But the Gemara says in Megillah, he didn't know Shabbat Yom Neilad Moshe. He knew Moshe Rabbeinu passed away. He did not know that on that day Moshe Rabbeinu was also born. Says Rashi, Kedai Yom Aleida Lechaper Al Yom HaMisa. It's appropriate the day on which Moshe Rabbeinu was born to be a kapara, to wipe away the ill, the negative of the Yom HaMisa, the day Moshe Rabbeinu passes away. He passed away Zayin Nodar. And as we had in a Sikha in Ishlang, Moshe Rabbeinu's Yortzeit is a day of tainus, a fast day, because Moshe did not want to pass away, he wanted to go into Eretz Yisrael and so on. But there's also Yom HaLeida. And the Rebbe analyzes this. What is the meaning of this Rashi? Kedai Yom HaLeida l'chapa Yom HaMisa. And in short, what the Rebbe says is that there's different madregas and tzaddikim. Most tzaddikim, when they're born, are not tzaddikim. Most tzaddikim, when they're born, since Hakel B'dei Shamayim, Chutz Meyiras Shamayim, what we are going to do with our lives is yet to be determined. So when a person is born and we don't know yet what's going to come of that person's life, yeah, you can't call him a tzaddik. But by Moshe Rabbeinu it says, Vatera Eise Ki Tev, says that Rashi in Isma Lahabayis Kula Oira, right? It's based on Chazal. The moment Moshe Rabbeinu was born, there was a light in the house. In other words, Moshe Rabbeinu was unusual. Because Moshe Rabbeinu was a different kind of neshama. Moshe Rabbeinu is called the neshama klolos, a general soul. And included in the neshama of Moshe Rabbeinu, the neshamas of Kol Adei Kula, the whole generation. By such tzaddikim, they're born a tzaddik. It's a whole different thing. Because their life is not a personal life, it's a community life, it's a collective life, it's a klal life. And this Haman didn't understand. Haman understood tzaddikim. And Haman understood Yortzeit. And Haman understood the sadness of a tzaddik passing away. But Haman did not understand the neshama. Haman could not understand the concept of a neshama of a yid, and specifically that all neshamas of all yidden are connected, and even more specifically that in the connection between one neshama and the second neshama. There's a concept called the neshama clause, a general soul, from which all the neshamas of a particular generation come. And this neshama clause is called the Rebbe, Reish B'nai Yisrael, the head of the Jewish people. And because he's Reish B'nai Yisrael, he has the schus, he has the merit, he has the shmira from the whole generation. And such a person, at the moment of his birth, is already a tzaddik. He's not shayches to Aveda. Like I tell you so many times, it says on the Kutta the Buddha from Friedrich and Rebbe. That Isaac Homler said once by a Fabrengen, Adar Marishan was not a Rebbe. Which is a funny thing to say, because Adar Marishan is the ultimate neshama klal. Adar Marishan includes every soul of every Jew for all times, till Mashiach. But he didn't have chassidim, you understand? He was the greatest neshama klal, but he didn't have an army. Moshe Rabbeinu had an army. And Isaac Homler said, had Adar Marishan had chassidim, it wouldn't be possible to do something which is against Ratzon Elyon, because as miszugebund neben falten Stunden, when you connect it on high, you don't fall below. And here's what's interesting: what connects someone lamaila, not his own schus, the amcha, his connection to the people. The people make a Rebbe. This is true bechitzonius, and it's true bepnimis, and it's true on every madrega. Chsidim make a Rebbe, not just bepoil, but bepnimis on yonim. A Rebbe is a neshama klos because the neshamas pratius that depend on him, and they raise him up to a higher madrega than he is by himself. Haman couldn't understand this. Haman couldn't understand neshamas b'chlal. He couldn't understand relatedness between neshamas, and he certainly could not understand the concept of Reish B'nai Yisrael. And therefore, to him, the day a person is born is no big deal. The day a person passes away, if they were a tzaddik, is a huge deal, and that's why Samach. Haman celebrated the fact that Moshe Rabbeinu passed away, because he said, "Oh, it's a good month, it's a bad mazel for Yidden," and the Eibishter was laughing. Because Haman was thinking, Moshe Rabbeinu is a bad month for Yidden, and the Eibishter laughs and says, "Do not asher goy." Today Moshe Rabbeinu was born. Moshe Rabbeinu represents the neshama of Yid, and because of the neshama of a Yid, the Eibishter will love even Yidden who are bigger Rishayim. The Eibishter will love and spare Yidden, even such Yidden that the Eibishter who deserve Rachmana Litzlan Kloya, the Nischaivu, right? They deserved whatever Haman wanted to bring upon them, but because of the neshama, the Eibishter loves Yidden, and Ifayachal does not destroy them. This is the first idea I wanted to share. That Moshe Rabbeinu is different. Moshe Rabbeinu is different. Moshe was a tzaddik from Leida, from absolute birth. He was a perfect person, Mileida. And I want you to know, I saw from the Rebbe letters. I've heard this Narishkeit stated, but there was some, I don't know who, some Misnagdish Agadol, who decided years ago that when Moshe Rabbeinu was a child, he was a troublemaker. I don't know if that's just Genumen, but he decided, Mistame, must have been why, when I was a kid I was a troublemaker, and I became a Gadol Yisrael, is a Raya as Moshe Rabbeinu did Al-Bazach. So the Rebbe writes, how could you say that Moshe Rabbeinu? At the Shtei Chumash Rashi, Nismal Abayis Kula Eirech. Tzaddikim sometimes when the children are shtifer, yeah, the troublemakers, yeah. But Moshe Rabbeinu, Nismal Abayis Kula Eirech. This is the first thing I want to show Moshe Rabbeinu. And the second thing I want to show Moshe Rabbeinu, the Rebbe spoke Pashas Tetzaveh Tov Nun Beis. We learned the Sikha years ago. For those who do not know, for the first 10 years, that's all we did was learn Sikhas. You know, the first 10 years, these classes, we learned the Sikhas Nalch Nun Beis. That's basically all we did. And when we completed them, we allowed ourselves to go on to other things. So Tetzaveh, we learned Kemat all of them, Rubam Kukulam, and they were all on tape. So we learned the Sikha of Tetzaveh, and one of the points that I made in that Sikha was that Moshe Rabbeinu was the Neshama Klals of his generation. So Zayin Adar Moshe Rabbeinu's birthday. Spiritually speaking, it's the birthday of all the Jews of his generation. But then the Rebbe said Moshe Rabbeinu was the first of all the Neshamas Klalios. All general souls are connected. And therefore Moshe Rabbeinu's birthday is not only the birthday of Moshe Rabbeinu, and by association spiritually the birthday of all the Jewish people of his time, it's the birthday of every Neshama Klaus, of every subsequent generation, because they all take what's called in the Zayir as Pashtusa de Moshe. It's a piece of Moshe Rabbeinu that makes them a Rebbe and nothing. So the Rebbe takes to another level. If Zayin Adar is Moshe Rabbeinu's birthday, and therefore it's the birth of all the Jews of his generation, and therefore it's also the birthday of all the Nesim Klolim of the subsequent generations, then it's also the birthday of every Neshama Pratis that's going to come from every Neshama Klolis that comes from the Neshama of Moshe Rabbeinu. In short, Zayin Adar is the birth of every single Jew on the planet. That's what the Rebbe says in that Sikha. It's fascinating. Apipnimis on Yonim, we're connected to Moshe Rabbeinu, which of course is a fundamental teaching in Chassidus, the relationship between a Yid and a Rebbe, and Nasi, and a Neshama Klaus, and the idea that it's a spiritual bond, it's a spiritual connection. So those are the 2 points that I wanted to share by way of introduction to this discussion on Zayin Adar. Number 1, that Moshe Rabbeinu is different. Nismal Abayis Kula Eira. And number 2, that his birthday is really all of our birthdays. Now I want to share two more points, also from the Sichos. The first one is Simchas Torah Mem Vav. I'll never forget it. Mem Zayin. Simchas Torah Mem Zayin. I was a shliach in California at the time, so I allowed myself to stay by the Farbrengen. I don't know if you remember, the night of Simchas Torah we used to go to the shuls. We came back from the shuls. It was 11:30. The Rebbe was at the end of the Farbrengen. But that year I went. I was a smart boy, like the Rebbe said once. I went to Machol Teilabam's Minyan. I was back by 9 o'clock. I was by my place. I was here almost the whole Farbrengen. Mem Zayin, Simchas Torah. That was the time the Rebbe turned his cup upside down, that you remember, yeah? That Farbrengen. But during that Farbrengen, the Rebbe spoke a Siche on Le'enei Kol Yisrael, the last Rashi in the Torah. Simchas Torah, we finished the Chumash. You read the Veis HaBroch. So the Rebbe spoke the last Rashi in Torah, Le'enei Kol Yisrael. Says Rashi, right, to put it in more words, the Chumash eulogizes Moshe Rabbeinu. The Chumash does a hesped. The Chumash eulogizes Moshe Rabbeinu. It makes a hesped on Moshe Rabbeinu. A hesped, a eulogy on Moshe Rabbeinu. There's two or three psukim, I think, which talks about the greatness of Moshe Rabbeinu. It says, it's three psukim. There wasn't and there will never be another Navi by Yidden like Moshe Rabbeinu. That God Almighty knew him, connected to him, put him upon him face to face. All the signs and the miracles that God Almighty sent him to do, Be'eretz Mitzrayim, in the land of Egypt, Lefare, to the Pharaoh, L'chal to all of his slaves, L'chal Arza, to his whole country. And then it says, L'chel Yada Chazaka, to all the great hand, L'chal Ameira God, and all the great Moira, or Asher also Moshe, that Moshe Rabbeinu did, La'enei Kol Yisrael, to the president of the Jewish people. So you have three psukim. The first pasuk is the hesped of Moshe Rabbeinu, in as much as connection to the Eibishter was concerned. The second pasuk is the hesped of Moshe Rabbeinu, in as much as Moshe Rabbeinu dealt with Goyishkeit, with Parei, with Mitzrayim. And the last pasuk is Moshe Rabbeinu as being the Rebbe the Nasi of Klal Yisrael. And in each of these words, it actually explains what it means. So Oisei is V'hameisim, Asher Asa Moshe. On the words La'enei Kol Yisrael, which is the last words of the Torah, Rashi says, Nisoi libe shel Moshe lishped asaluchas. The heart of Moshe Rabbeinu was lifted up to break the luchas. K'meshe kosov asher shibarto, like it says the pasuk asher shibarto. Yasher keichach asher shibarto. Thank you for breaking the luchas. And Rashi says, Hiskima daita shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu daita shel Moshe. Hashem agreed to Moshe Rabbeinu. I'm not saying the Rashi in order, but those are the words. So the Rebbe quoted this, and then the Rebbe asked Akasha. That's the shvach of Moshe Rabbeinu. They broke the luchas, and it's not stam the shvach; it's the final shvach. And everybody knows that the end is the most important thing. How can you leave for the very end? The very last thing is that what Moshe Rabbeinu broke the luchas. Doesn't the grace cut Moshe Rabbeinu to break the luchas? This was the kasha that Rebbe asked, and then there was a siche which anybody who was present will never forget. The Rebbe spoke about Moshe Rabbeinu's Avas Yisrael, and how by Moshe Rabbeinu Yidden were more important than the Torah. And he explained very emotionally, how when Moshe Rabbeinu saw that Yidden were in Sakana, so to save the Yidden, I can hear the Rebbe screaming, Tzebrach in the Torah. I can hear the voice. Tzebrach, he broke the Torah. He consulted nobody. He didn't have a conversation with anybody. Even with Eibishter himself. And the Rebbe said, when Moshe Rabbeinu broke the first luchas, he didn't know that the Eibishter was going to give him a second set. He had no idea. This was it. He says, the Yidden were in Sakana. The erste Zach hat weggestellt, so brachen the luchas. It was very powerful. But one of the things I remember, there were a lot of expressions that Farbrengen that came out of the Rebbe with so much hisrachas. But one of the expressions was, "Was is der Ringe for Moshe Rabbeinu?" What and the Rebbe said loud, very Zog die Gemara Menachas. I have to say to you that I remember, I looked up to see my Zekon. I'm repeating to you words that I remember, but these words, Zog die Gemara Menachas, I didn't remember. I looked it up inside. Zog die Gemara Menachas. The halacha in Edis, it has to be mipiyim v'lei mipik savim. A witness has to say what he remembers. If a witness doesn't remember and you show him a document, he says, oh, I said it, okay. That's not kosher. But there's a halacha if a witness looks up a piece of paper and it helps him recall the event. In other words, not he's telling you if it says that I wrote this, then I must have written it. But he says, now that I saw it, I remember, that's allowed. So I looked up the Hanocha, and then I could hear the Rebbe screaming these words, Zog di Gemara Menachas, Moshe Rabbeinu Oyev Yisrael Hoya. It's impossible for me to sing the tune, to sing the music with which the Rebbe gave out these words. What's Moshe Rabbeinu? Zog di Gemara Menachas. I'm giving you the words, but I can't give you the srachshas. The emotion was extraordinary. It was very deep. It wasn't so loud as much as it was deep. Moshe Rabbeinu, Oyev Yisrael Hoya. Moshe Rabbeinu loved Jews. That was the vart of the whole sikh. That Moshe Rabbeinu, Avas Yisrael, was greater than his Avas HaTorah. And his Avas Yisrael was so much greater than Avas HaTorah that to save a few people from the Erev Rav, the Rebbe talked it all out. Who sinned in the Egel? A handful of people. And what kind of people? And Moshe Rabbeinu broke the Torah for all of the people, including for the greatest people, including for himself. And he had no idea that there would be another Torah. And Moshe Rabbeinu did this to save Klal Yisrael. So this is another point that I want to share. This today is Ayanodeh. We're talking Moshe Rabbeinu. This is one of those moments I didn't have to read about Nasikh. I partially remember the Rebbe speaking this Inyan that Moshe Rabbeinu had a maiden Avos. I'll let you speak in one more minute. There's a very interesting way to describe this. Moshe Rabbeinu was given a task, a shlichus. His task was to be the Rei and Moshe Yisrael, to look after the Jewish people. You have in Chumash in 2 places at least where Moshe Rabbeinu said, I can't handle this. In Pashas B'Shalach it says, Eid ma'at oskoluni, a little more they're going to stone me. And then in the other one in Ba'aleischa is the worst, Lo ma'arayesa. I forgot the pasuk, how the pasuk goes. He'anechi harisi, it's Amazeh im anechi yiliditiu. Ki temed alai, ki sa'eu b'checha, shi sa'eu b's'einik. Allah Adama, Moshe says to the Eibishter, what did you do? What did I do? Why are you so mean to me? Why did you give me this collection of bombs? Moshe Rabbeinu was protesting to the Eibishter why the Eibishter gave him the achrayis. It wasn't an easy job. The bottom line is he did his job b'emunah. I've told this to you a kamavomim already. A story of Chumash. The Malach HaMavos is killing people, and Aaron HaKain sends them. Moshe Rabbeinu says Aaron HaKain after the Malach HaMavos with a pan of potatoes, and he catches up the Malach HaMavos and he grabs him and says, "That's it, no more killing." And the Malach HaMavos says, "Excuse me, who are you?" He says, "Me, I work for Moshe Rabbeinu." So the Malach HaMavos says to Adar Moshe, "And I work for Moshe Rabbeinu's boss, and I was told to kill." And Adar Moshe said, "I was supposed to stop you." So the Malach HaMavos said, "I don't understand. Divri Arav, Divri Atal, Divri Mishem. You work for the boss, for the servant. I work for his boss. The boss says I should kill. Your master, who's the servant of my boss, says I shouldn't kill. Who should I listen to?" So Adar Moshe says, "Hezachayim. I don't know what the story is. I just know that if my boss says something, the Eibishter said it also." So they come Pesach Hayom here, and the Eibishter says, "Yeah, you got to listen to Moshe." Moshe Rabbeinu loved Yidden, even when the Eibishter wanted him not to love Yidden, because this was the shlichus that the Eibishter gave.
Just like the detail, why did Moshe brought the luchos? Because he saw a sakana, or
The Rebbe brought Kama Chazals. The Sikha revolved on a few Mamalachas. The Sikha is already printed in the Sikhas. In Chelik Lamed, in Stamach Chelik Lamed Daled, and if not Lamed Daled, Lamed Tes, there's a Sikha, Chelik Lamed Daled, V'zeisa Bracha. The Sikha is edited. The Sikha revolved around 7 Mamalach Chazal. The most famous Mamalach Chazal is the one where the Medrash says that Yidna higher than Torah, Machshavna Sheyisrael Kodma L'chol Dover, Afil L'Machshav HaTorah, Yidna higher than Torah. So Moshe Rabbeinu says, if Yidna b'sakona, you have to sacrifice the Torah to save Yidna. But then we brought the other medrash about the king's arusa. The king has an arusa, and the king goes away, and the king comes back, and he hears a shmua that his arusa was miskalkel. But it wasn't true. It wasn't the arusa was miskalkel. It was the shvachas that were miskalkel. It wasn't the betrothed. It wasn't the kala of the king that was miskalkel. It was the maidservants in the house. But the king hears that his kala was niskalkel, and he's very angry. So the friend of the king goes ahead and tears up the ksubah. He tears it up. Why? Because he wants to slow him down. Because the king is going to act in anger. He's going to kill his kala. The Chavere Shal Melech knows that the Yarusa didn't sin, but he also knows that the king needs time to collect evidence. So he breaks the ksubah Then the king comes into the palace. There's a shmua that Neskalkala, his arusa, he wants to kill her. She says, he's not your arusa, there's no ksubah. So he calms down and he researches it, and he discovers that it was never the arusase shel malach that was Neskalkal, it was shevchasei. So then he turns to his friend and says, so why did you tear up the ksubah? She didn't sin. Why did you tear up the ksubah? He says, because I wanted to give you time to be able to do the necessary research to make this discovery. So the Melech says, Eiba Shrei, Shreib do the zweite ksubah. You broke the first ksubah, you make the second ksubah. That's why the second luchas, the Eibush tells Moshe Rabbeinu psalacha. The Rashi is in Parshas Kisis, in next week's parsha. You understand? So Rebbe brought this medrash. There's two medrashim why Moshe Rabbeinu broke the luchas. Al Asar, it says that if the Yidden are even on one Aveda, the Adar, Kol Ben Nechal Yechal Bey, a person who's Adar, doesn't have a bris, can't eat Korban Pesach, and if you eat it, it's V'nechrisa. So here you have Kol HaTeira Kula, and Yidden were even the whole Teira, for sure you have to take the Teira from them. That was what Rashi says on the Pasuk where he breaks it. But later on, where the Eibush tells Moshe Rabbeinu, Psalacha, take the second luchas, it says this, that Moshe Rabbeinu made a cheshbon. Let me first break the ksubah. I'll break the ksubah, the Eibush I can have tainus. Then the Eibush will discover that it's only the aid of Rav. You understand? So the Rebbe brought this medrash, as the Rebbe, these two medrashim, as the thought process of Moshe Rabbeinu to break the luchas. First of all, Yidden are in sakon, and second of all, the Yidden didn't even sin. The aid of Rav sinned. This is one idea that I wanted to share with you. I guess at this point it's a third idea that I wanted to share, but again, it's another. And the fourth idea I want to share with you, and I get every day a video from Jem and from somebody else. There's also Gems, but it's not called Jem, but by a different name. And both of them sent me videos of the same Fabrengen, but fortunately for me, they sent me different shtiklach. I get from Jem, and I can be happy to give it to you. There's the daily clip, 2-minute clips I get from Me Too, I don't know what they call themselves. And then I get every day a minute or so from Jem. So both of them sent me the same Fabrengen. I remember the Fabrengen. It was a few months before I went on Shlichus. I was here, where the Rebbe, Zayin Adar, Tafshin Mem Hei, the Rebbe Fabrengen. That means 30 years ago this year, Rebbe Fabrengen, and I think it was stuck on Thursday night, which is the same Kviyas as this year. I think that's what he said on the tape. And I'll never forget Fabrengen. Ich mein, Bechlal, a Fabrengen by the Rebbe was an event. I try to explain this to people. The Rebbe Fabrengen thousands of times. Some Fabrengens went on for 10 hours. Some Fabrengens went on for an hour and a half, for 2 hours, 3 hours. The weekday Fabrengens, B'derech Klal, were about 3 hours long. The Rebbe started at 9:30. If the Fabrengen was not finished by 12:30, it was rare. Usually by midnight. The Fabrengen was 2 hours, 2.5, 3 hours, and a little bit. And it was more or less predictable. You knew the length of a Fabrengen. But the Rebbe put himself completely into every Fabrengen. With every Fabrengen, the first person he aroused and inspired was himself. I heard in the name of the Rebbetzin, and if you believe everything, you're a fool. If you don't believe everything, you're a pakatis. I heard in the name of the Rebbetzin that the Rebbetzin said that whenever the Rebbe Fabrengs, that night he can't sleep from excitement. When the Rebbe makes a Fabrengen, he excites himself, so a whole night he sits and learns to bring a shul from the Rotz of the Fabreng. But in any case, I remember this Fabrengen, I remember it well. I can't say, the truth is I don't remember it well, because you asked me what the Rebbe said. I just remember one point. The whole Fabrengen, the Rebbe said, what's Moshe Rabbeinu Teira? I just told you a different Siche, where the Rebbe said, what's Moshe Rabbeinu Avas Yisrael? And you break the Teira to preserve Yidden. And this Fabrengen, Mem Hei, the whole Fabrengen talked about Teira. Moshe Rabbeinu's name was Teira. It says even in Chazal, Teiv Ayin Hu Yeveirach Yinosa Milach Milado. The Eibush gave the Teira to Moshe Rabbeinu, the Teira Shabal Peh. And Moshe Rabbeinu had it for himself. And Moshe Rabbeinu, he was generous, and he gave it to the whole Klal Yisrael. Or like you have even in Chumash. Moshe Rabbeinu wrote a Sefer Torah, and he gave it to Shevet Levi. So the other 12 Shvatim came along and said, wait a minute, you're giving the Torah to Levi? Tomorrow Levi tells us, it's not your Torah, we want our own Torah. So Moshe Rabbeinu, B'simcha Rabbe, sat down in one day and wrote 12 Sefer Torah. How do you write 12 Sefer Torah in a day? I don't know. But Moshe Rabbeinu, he gave one for Reuven and one for Shimon. And Moshe got such delight, got such nachas from the fact that Yidden protested the idea, don't give the Torah to the elite. Torah was given in a midbar, says the Rambam. Why was it given in a midbar? Because a midbar is a makam hefket. It's munachas bekerem zavis. The Torah sits in a corner. Anybody who wants can go take it. It's free. The Torah is available to anybody who wants to have it. Now the Rebbe spoke in this Fabrengen, the Yidden Moshe Rabbeinu was Torah. The Rebbe, there's only one way to have the Torah, to learn it. And I remember going home after that Fabrengen, thinking to myself, what's yeshiva going to look like in the morning? When we had a Fabrengen, we had a 10-hour policy. I think it was 10 hours. As the Fabrengen finished 12:30, we had to bring yeshiva the next day 10:30. I think it was a 10-hour policy. Bottom line is, I walked into the Beis Medrash 7:30 in the morning, there wasn't an empty seat in the room. I remember being so delighted that I came because I wanted to be a big chassid, you understand? But apparently everybody felt the same way. The whole Fabrengen, there was a Moshe Rabbeinu's Torah. Torah you have to get. There's only one way to get the Torah. And you have to get the Torah b'yigiyah. You have to have it in Torah. And this is, the Rebbe's Metzias is Torah. How many times did the Rebbe say, you want to give me a gift? Give me Torah. That's the only kind of gift I need. Give me a gift of a nice watch. I don't have much use for it. But you give me a matana of Torah, this gives me incredible nachas. And these are Moshe Rabbeinu's in Yonah. Moshe Rabbeinu's in Abbas Yisrael. Moshe Rabbeinu's in is Torah. Moshe Rabbeinu's in is also the Beis HaMikdash. Moshe Rabbeinu's in the Beis HaMikdash. And the Beis HaMikdash is the idea of also the Mikdash for Shechanti B'Seichav, to make this world a home for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So now you have to think about this. Moshe Rabbeinu is from Shemitah Rishena, yeah? Moshe Rabbeinu shouldn't exist in this world. He shouldn't. Why not? Because Moshe Rabbeinu's neshama is from some madrege where people don't speak b'chlal, they only think. Moshe Rabbeinu is a true neshama from Eilam HaMachshav. And he tells the Eibishter, Kvat Peo, Kvat Loshon Anechi, I cannot speak. And not I cannot speak because I have an impediment. My neshama is higher than Dibur. And the Eibishter tells him, Misan Pelo Adam, I'll give you words. And Moshe Rabbeinu becomes a darshan, Unachvi, he becomes Moshe Rabbeinu. When the Yidden, his generation, goes into the Midbar, they have a kinship with Moshe Rabbeinu. What's their kinship with Moshe Rabbeinu? They, like Moshe Rabbeinu, come from Eilam HaMachshav. They're also very spiritual. So when it comes into going to Eretz Yisrael, they panic. What do we have to do with Eretz Yisrael? What do we have to do with Derech B'Tachtonim? We're in Al Yonim. We're busy with Machshava. And you know that it says in the Gemara, it's brought in Chassidus, that the day Ram Midbar Eilam Chelik Eilam Haba. That the Yidden in the Midbar don't have a Chelik Eilam Haba. Why not? Because Eilam Haba is Gashmiyat. And the day Rishon Moshe Rabbeinu, like Moshe Rabbeinu himself, is Eilam HaMachshava, and Eilam HaMachshava is the Shachas to this world. So of course the Rebbe points out, I think it says in Rabbeinu Bechaz, it says in Rishonim, that Moshe Rabbeinu stays in the Midbar with his generation, and he does have Tchias HaMeisim, and because the leader has Tchias HaMeisim, he sees to it that his whole door will have Tchias HaMeisim as well. In other words, the idea that the date of Hamidbar has B'chelik Eilam Haba is only without Moshe Rabbeinu. Because of Moshe Rabbeinu has Eilam Haba, Moshe Rabbeinu has Tchias HaMeisim, and he schleps them with him. In other words, Moshe Rabbeinu passes away in the desert to see to it that his door will have Tchias HaMeisim. But here's what the irony is. Dafke Moshe Rabbeinu loves the land. Right? Who loved the land? Moshe Rabbeinu and the women. The women, the Bnei Slavcha, the Moshe Rabbeinu, they had a love for Eretz Yisrael. And of course, the Rebbe brings out the Mailas of David. Moshe Rabbeinu was the least connected to this world. And Moshe Rabbeinu was the most aware of the kavanah of the Eibishter in this world. He lusted for Eretz Yisrael. And he didn't lust for Eretz Yisrael, he lusted for Eretz Yisrael because he wanted the mitzvahs of Eretz Yisrael to make a dinalei baruch b'tachtenim, which is fascinating. A Yid who's completely removed from this world, at the same time he's dedicated to the kavanah of this world because this is the Ratzon Eli. So you have three things right there: the Avos Yisrael of Moshe Rabbeinu, the Torah of Moshe Rabbeinu, and the Direh B'tachtenim of Moshe Rabbeinu. And the truth is that the three are connected. In other words, when you appreciate Moshe Rabbeinu's love for Eretz Yisrael, you can then fully understand the Torah that Moshe Rabbeinu gave us, and you can fully understand what a Yid is. Okay, so today's Moshe Rabbeinu, Zuchusa Yogein Aleinu. His zakuf, his edelkeit, his purity, his holiness should be a shmida for all of us. And like the Rebbe brings always a Tosfos that says, Moshe Vanimah. Even though Tchias HaMeisim happens many years after Mashiach comes, but certain tzaddikim get up right away, and amongst them is Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu has to make an appearance, and we're going to run to the Rebbe. Moshe won't be insulted. You can see Moshe Rabbeinu, and you're going to run to the Rebbe.